Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the September 9th regular meeting of Council. And I would, with respect, like to recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Welcome back from holiday, Ms. Gurry. The question period sign-up sheet is on the partition wall near the gallery. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question, would you please write down your name, the agenda item, and at the start of question period, I'll call up those who've signed up to the podium to address Council. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there is a late item this evening that's not noted on the addendum, and that is because Mr. Brady, who is presenting regarding item 10A, is unable to attend unexpectedly. So we would request that that item be removed and put on next Monday's agenda.
Perfectly reasonable suggestion. I would therefore ask for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Brown, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favour? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. A motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Councillor Hemmens, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Under the Mayor's report, I have a couple of items. Firstly, I do want to recognize that this past weekend at two celebrations on Saturday, many city staff and citizens paid tribute to the lives of Tim Ripka and Mike Rogers, and I commend those who came out to celebrate the lives of these two individuals who were devoted workers to the city and generated obviously a great deal of affection and respect among their fellow workers. The city itself has been awarded the Green Communities designation by the Joint Provincial Union of BC Municipalities Green Communities Committee as a BC Climate Action Community. This recognition marks the city's achievement of Level 3 in the Climate Action Recognition Program. It's the third of 4 levels. We've been a signatory to the Climate Action Charter since October of 2008, and the city has demonstrated its commitment to work with the province and the Union of BC Municipalities to take action on climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In 2018, the city produced 2,985 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, with approximately 66% of emissions coming from powering, heating, and cooling municipal buildings, 23% from the municipal fleet, and 11% from city contracted services. So we are making some progress, and I think good progress. The 4 levels, for those who are marking, Level 1 is demonstrating progress on charter commitments. Level 2 is measuring GHG emissions. Level 3 is accelerating progress on charter commitments. And finally, Level 4 is achievement of carbon neutrality. So we're going to work, as we have done so far, to boost us from 3 to 4, which would be a wonderful achievement for this city. And I commend everyone who has worked for the city to make this happen. On the cultural side, I'm calling on all poets. Apply to be Nanaimo's next Poet Laureate. It'll be a 3-year term starting January 2020 to January 2023. And the purpose of the Poet Laureate, if you don't know it already, is to serve as the people's poet and to raise awareness of poetry, the literary arts, and the positive impact literature and poetry can have on our community's cultural life and life in general. The terms of reference and application form are available online, www.nanaimo.ca/culture/environment/poetry/poet laureate. And the person in person at the Service and Resource Centre, 411 Dunsmuir, or contacting the city at 250-755-4483, or culture and heritage at nanaimo.ca. And the deadline for application submission is 4 p.m. on October 31st, 2019. In addition, this week marks the first edition of the city's e-newsletter, My Nanaimo This Week. So our communications department is up and running, and we don't want to put the media out of a job, of course, who are always faithfully in attendance at our meetings and the coverage that we receive through Shaw, which is important. But I am hoping that people will take advantage of this new opportunity, particularly for those of you who, as Councillor Bonner will always point out about my own deficiencies, are far more literate with technology and other modern methods of communication than myself. I should tell you that amongst the many things noted in Nanaimo this week is the announcement and reminder for the Terry Fox Run on next September the 15th. And I can tell the city happily that Terry's brother Fred Fox visited the City Hall on Thursday, September 5th, and received a warm reception from all of us. There are a number of other items as well, but this past weekend was the Parkinson's Walk to raise awareness with respect to Parkinson's that impacts on 13,000 British Columbians. And I just want to say, in a happy start to this week, the number of people who came out and the number of people I expect to see at the Terry Fox one reflects why we're all proud to serve on the council of this city and recognize that it's a community that takes seriously the challenges that many of our fellow citizens face. So congratulations to all who've participated in various walks and charitable functions this year and through the summer, and I look forward to seeing a number of you out on Sunday at the Terry Fox Run. Ms. Gurry, we have no presentations. We have no delegations. We do have a motion for adoption of consent items, but I believe that there is an interest in pulling 9A1 for somewhat further discussion at the close of the consent items. Is that correct? Ms. Gurry?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I believe Councillor Thorpe wished to remove that item to be considered separately. Just having a brief update from Mr. Corson while he's available to speak to that recommendation that was made at the Governance and Priorities Committee.
I think that is an excellent idea, Councillor Thorpe. And having heard that,
Well, say no more.
we discussed it this morning. So can we?
Sorry, may I speak to it, Your Worship?
Yes, certainly.
Actually, Your Worship, I'm sorry, if you could vote on the remainder of the
I was
consent
just
items
going to say, if
first.
we could vote on the remainder, thank you. We can vote on the remainder of the consent items. Motion for adoption, moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Hemmons. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And yes, as Ms. Gurry indicated, the only reason I wish to have this removed relates for any viewers that might not be aware to the formation, the next steps of our very important economic development function in the city, and I thought it warranted just an explanation briefly from staff before we hopefully go ahead and approve it. Thank you.
Mr. Corson, good evening. Please.
Thanks. Good evening, Your Worship. Yes, I'm very happy to give an update on the economic development function and the work that's gone on since the start of this year. Beginning of the year, Council had a half-day session with Dale Wilden from the Economic Development Association of BC, and he provided Council with an overview of what the economic development function could look like. Staff came back in April with a terms of reference for Council to approve, which was to have a consultant come and take a look at the economic development function and what it could be in Nanaimo. Subsequently, we hired Nielsen Strategies to undertake the assignment, and they undertook best practice. They looked at other communities in British Columbia. They looked at the various services that are being provided. They looked at the funding levels. They met with up to, I think, over 20 stakeholders in Nanaimo who are involved in economic development to get a sense for what they would like to see the community do in terms of economic development. They came back with an interim report. We had an open house. We had a workshop with the key stakeholders. And we reported back to Council with a draft report for your consideration. And then we had the final report presented just at the end of August. And in that report, there was a series of recommendations which lay out how the economic development function could and potentially will be delivered going forward. And the three main recommendations, even though there's quite a few in the resolution, the main ones are that the city will have an in-house function with up to 2 staff delivering a range of services, including research and helping people navigate the system, developing the initial economic development strategy, as well as helping with the tourism function, which now is spread out amongst the organization. And then it also recommended setting up a city-owned external function, which the consultant is recommending being called the Nanaimo Prosperity Agency, which is a nice ring to it. And that would have, even though it's owned by the city, it would have some staff and their job would be to help implement the actual economic development strategy. So that would take place in 2020. In terms of immediate next steps, I think for the public and for council to be aware of, the first step is to get a steering committee up and running, or task force, and its function is to oversee the creation of the economic development strategy, which is crucial to understand where we're going to focus our resources and time and which areas are most important. We will then, once that steering committee or task force is established, we'll issue terms of reference to get the strategy started. And that committee or task force will oversee the development of the strategy. And then at the same time, we will start looking at the external model and what that could actually entail. We had a bit of a discussion, or at least council had a bit of a discussion about the chicken and egg and whether one should do the strategy first or have the function figured out. And I think the way we're heading will work well, and that we'll get the strategy going. At the same time, we're starting to talk about the external model. By the time we have the strategy done, we'll have a much better sense as to the amount of resourcing that needs to go into the external piece while the internal piece is established in early 2020. I don't think I'm missing anything, but I'm very much happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corson. Are there further questions of staff? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I just happened to hear that you said it would be up to a maximum, like up to 2 city employees in the city part of it. I don't remember discussing that in our deliberations. Is that something the city has just decided on?
It's actually in the report.
It is?
It was one of his recommendations. But yeah, in term, that's also, I think the key thing for us right now is to really get the strategy put together and figure out how we're going to divide the resources up. I think by next June, hopefully we'll have a much better, clearer sense as to the next steps forward. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, thank you, Mr. Corson, for providing that background update. This did, as we know, come through as a unanimous recommendation from the committee. I'll just comment that I have had a number of citizens in the community express to me how pleased they are to see this moving forward. So thank you for your work on it, you and other staff. And I would be pleased right now to move the staff recommendation on this topic.
Moved adoption. Seconded, Councillor Martman. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. I think it's a very important step forward, and I'm hoping it gives the community the confidence that it needs to feel in its council, because we are as concerned about the economy in this community as is everyone else, and we want to keep it moving forward. The next item are reports. Having deleted A, Municipal and Regional Tax Renewal Bylaw, we are on to road closure and disposition, unnamed road adjacent to 3500 Rock City Road. Mr. Lindsay, give us the interesting history on this, because I'm sure there are a lot of council watchers who are wondering what this is all about.
Thank you, Your Worship. And maybe to help with the story, I can ask that attachment A be brought up on the screen. As you're referring to this, somewhat of an unusual situation. There's a piece of road dedication on the subject property at 3500 Rock City Road that's never been built on, never constructed, it's never had a public thoroughfare on it. And it's always been somewhat of a mystery, to be honest, about why that road dedication is there. Because if you visit the site, you see that it actually terminates into a pond, and there's environmentally sensitive features around the site. What we've had is the applicant's surveyor has gone back and done some research into this case and found out that in 1963, there was actually an error that resulted in this land being dedicated, gazetted as road at that time. So they've produced that evidence, brought it forward to staff. Staff have reviewed it and concur with their findings, and as such are recommending that council take the steps of closing the road, directing staff to proceed with the required notification, public notification, and giving first 2 readings to the associated road dedication, highway closure and dedication bylaw. And as we've pulled up the attachment now, the area, the hatched area in question, the 970 square meters, is the area that we're talking about for closure this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. It's always interesting that to know that even surveyors make mistakes on occasion.
Rarely, yes.
And that errors can occur. Will someone make the recommended motion? Move 1 to 3. Councillor Brown,
Oh, you're good.
seconded Councillor Turley.
Can I
And
speak?
you have a question,
I
Councillor
do,
Turley.
yes. Actually, just a comment. I'd just like to also remind everybody that at the time the error was made, it was not a part of the city of Nanaimo, but the District of Wellington.
I think someone was just thrown under a bus on the road that never got driven on. Any further discussion? And we can do all 3 motions at once. Ms. Gurry?
Yes, Your Worship, you can do the first 3, and then the next 2 would need to be moved separately and read out.
4 and 5 separately. So motions 1, 2, and 3 under 1. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Councillor Gesselbrock, I think properly speaking, as acting mayor, you should be doing this.
I move that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2019, number 7289, to provide for highway closure and dedication removal of an unnamed road adjacent to 3500 Rock City Road, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I move that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2019, number 7289, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. The next is proposed road closure, part of 5th Street and land exchange at 900 5th Street. Mr. Lindsay again, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And in this case, thank you, you're ahead of me. Attachment B, I was going to ask for. If we can just scroll up a little bit, we can, or down, sorry. The area in yellow is the area that's currently owned by the city. Or sorry, the area in yellow is currently owned by VIU. The area in red is currently owned by the city. What we're proposing is to do a land exchange with VIU, which would deal with a couple of historic issues on the site, including the fact that a portion of the Stroxman Stadium straddles the property line and extends onto the VIU property, and that the land that we own at the top of 5th Street is actually being used as part of the parking and access to the parking lot for VIU. So we have made an agreement. Mr. Corson and his team worked closely with VIU to come up to an agreement. An appraisal's been done, which indicates that both properties have a value of approximately $175,000. So there's no additional exchange of funds, just simply a land exchange. The 2 parties have agreed to cost share on all legal fees and surveying costs associated with this land exchange, and we're recommending this evening that Council direct us to proceed. Proceed with public notice and give first 2 readings to the associated bylaw.
And just to confirm, Mr. Lindsay, unless I'm mistaken, and I believe the numbers are correct, we're in fact getting the bigger chunk and they're getting the smaller chunk. Is that fair to say?
We haven't pointed that out to VIU, but in seriousness, Your Worship, the appraisal took that into account. There's challenges with certainly the larger chunk that the city's getting has a good section of that land that's riparian into a creek. So the reality is, yeah, we're getting a larger section, but there's a good section of it which has encumbrances on it.
Thank you very much. If someone would care to make the recommended motion. Councillor Hemmens. Seconded, Councillor Gesselbrock. Any discussion?
Your Worship, just to clarify, I'm sorry, that's for motions 1 through 3 again, just to clarify, thanks.
Yes. For clarification, motions 1 through 3. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll go to Councillor Gesselbrock.
I move that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2019, number 7290, to provide highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of 5th Street adjacent to 900 5th Street, pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I
Councillor
move
Gesselbrock.
that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2019, number 7290, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And the next and last item under this section is Spindle Whirl Maintenance and Repair. Again, Mr. Lindsay, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is simply a report for information. What you see on the screen is an image. The bottom image is the original spindle whorl. This was a project that came out of the 23 Temporary Public Art Program. Although it was originally intended to be temporary public art, the city did eventually end up purchasing this piece, and it was installed and sat for a number of years at the corner of Albert and Victoria in our downtown core. A couple of years ago, the actual the spindle portion was stolen. So the upper image shows it with the spindle has been removed and stolen. What we're outlining in the report is that staff are proceeding and have worked with the existing artist, Joel Good, who's a Nanaimo Coast Salish artist, to redo that spindle for us. The cost coming from our temporary art budget and approximately $6,000 allocated to this project. So the idea is that the piece will be reinstalled. We have had discussions, and you've had discussions about the redevelopment of that park space for something that's been referred to as the Tideline Park. In the event that this public art piece will no longer reside on that park, the city does own this asset. So if it doesn't end up in that park, it will end up in another public space throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Any questions for Mr. Lindsay? Item is for information and for explanation to the public. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Lindsay. Under the summary reports, I'm assuming forcibly removed refers to stolen. Is that?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. The next is bylaws, zoning amendment bylaw number 2019, number 4500.152. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2019, number 4500.152, to rezone 350 Terminal Avenue to allow cannabis retail store as a site-specific use in the Terminal Avenue zone be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? I must say that I want to offer a small comment on this. Earlier today, most of us received an email from an individual visiting from the province of Alberta who commented, and I want to read this. I am on vacation from Alberta, and it is utterly disappointing your little city has no legal cannabis vendors. Legalization happened almost a year ago. Be better, you backwater hicks.
Thank you, Alberta.
Guy responded politely, good afternoon, sorry you were disappointed, but the city has approved the zoning of numerous sites, and it is our provincial government that has not licensed these stores, so your frustration should be directed to them, not us. Cheers. And less than 2 hours ago, received this response. Thank you for your response. I would like to offer my apologies for being rude and insulting your community. I find Nanaimo charming and lovely. Please accept my apologies, and I will direct my displeasure towards the provincial government. It's nice to know good manners still exist in Canada. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is nuisance abatement and cost recovery bylaw 2019, number 7250. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I move that nuisance abatement and cost recovery bylaw 2019, number 7250, to prevent, abate, and prohibit nuisances and provide for the cost of recovery of abatement and nuisances be adopted.
Seconded. Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And the next is housing agreement bylaw 2019, number 7291. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I move that housing agreement bylaw 2019, number 7291, to authorize a housing agreement for a 31-unit multiple family rental housing building at 337 Robson Street be adopted.
Seconded. Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is the bylaw status sheet. That is for information only, Ms. Gurry. We have no correspondence. We have no notices of motion that I'm aware of. And under other business, Councillor Bonner's motion regarding the John Howard Society treatment beds. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Whereas you recognize that the city has an addiction crisis and that there are not enough addiction facilities to meet the demand for treatment, and that the John Howard Society presently has 5 beds available for addiction treatment that are not being used because of lack of funding. That a one-time grant of $70,500 be provided to the John Howard Society to fund 5 beds at the Vancouver Island Therapeutic Community for 6 months.
Second.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd actually like to refer this item to the Health and Homeless Task Force with a staff report for their consideration and subsequent recommendation to Council.
Is there a seconder? Second. Councillor Hemmons. Speaking to the motion to refer, Councillor Turley.
Oh, I was on the other ones.
Right. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, yes. I think that's important because there's other facilities that are also empty, operating empty, and I think if we were to do this, we'd have to go to RFP to come in line with the Northwest Treaty Agreement, which we must follow in line with. So, and secondly, I'm not going to support it regardless because I do not believe that, I believe this is a download from the provincial government and our property tax dollars should not be utilized for health and 5 people when we could use that $70,000 to help 80 or 90 people versus 5. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, just briefly, I'll support the motion to refer, I think just because of the process, and I think it's important that we follow proper process, and I think it deserves to be referred for some background information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am also in favor of the deferral. This came out of a conversation of the Health and Housing Task Force, and my apologies, Council, it should have come from them. I saw an opportunity to help 5 people, but not only help 5 people, but to help our community by getting 5 people into addiction treatment for what I thought was a very minimal cost. And I'm glad that it's going back to the Health and Housing Task Force, and I look forward to the conversation that we'll have there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I fully support the referral, and I commend Councillor Bonner on his, I think, his innovation and creativity. We are in the middle of a crisis. This morning, the CBC reported that the Mayor of Vancouver indicated that he has never seen the downtown east side be so bad. A tent city sprung up on Bowen Island on the weekend, and I think these are conversations that really should rest at the Health and Housing Task Force, and I'm looking forward to having it. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Yes, Your Worship, I would just like to make 2 quick comments. Number one, I would request that when this item is discussed at the committee level or task force, that some research or investigation for ultimate funding sources be considered, and whether that's through staff or the committee itself, whatever works best. And also, the other thing I have concern about is making sure we have some sort of assurance that this isn't going to be an ongoing request, that it's a one-time only.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And speaking to the deferral, I'm for the deferral. But the reason I seconded the motion was because I do believe that sometimes we not only need to think outside of the box, we need to act outside of the box. And I hope this message that says we're in such desperate times that we're going to take our city dollars and actually apply them to something that the provincial has a jurisdiction for. I get that. And I know it's a slippery slope when City Council starts to think about picking up provincial work. But we are in desperate times here right now, and 5 addicts getting treatment helps with our crime, helps with others. I hope that we defer this and have a healthy discussion because we need actions taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I too commend Councillor Bonner for bringing this forward and pursuing action, because we do need action. And I think that's what we empowered the Health and Homelessness Task Force to do, to go out and find things that we can act on. So I look forward to this recommendation, but I'm also looking forward to any other recommendations that the Health and Homeless Task Force want to bring forward, that they believe that if we followed those paths, that we can help those that are on the street and help those that are living next to the housing sites, that helps those businesses that, such as the Old City Quarter, that are constantly impacted by this problem. And it is going to take all levels of government to solve it. So I don't want to get too hung up on, is it downloading, is it not downloading? At the end of the day, we all share this responsibility as those that are elected to represent our communities. And I commend Councillor Bonner and Councillor Hemmens for signing up for the very hard work of that task force. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to commend all members of council for their expressions of support for this motion tonight, and to Councillor Bonner for bringing it forward. I think it's fair to say that most people know I disagree profoundly with even the concept of doing it for a whole series of reasons, and particularly around provincial downloading. But having said that, as mayor and members of council, each one of us receives every week letters expressing an often troubling mix of conviction and frustration and compassion around the issues of mental health and addiction and the homelessness and all of the things that, and the petty crime, and indeed in some cases more severe crime that relates to all of this. And I think it's fair to say that all members of council are becoming more and more frustrated with a situation in some areas that does not appear to be improving, and one that we know from the media, accepting what they report from across the province and what we hear from our fellow municipal politicians, exists across this province. So the compassion that motivated Councillor Bonner and his concern and frustration and his desire to perhaps use this as an opportunity to do what the province and to some extent the federal government should be doing, I think is one to be commended on one level. As mayor, however, I do candidly state I find it somewhat frustrating because of my concerns around provincial downloading. But I think I can speak for this council to this community tonight that we are all frustrated. We are saddened by what we see on our streets. I speak particularly to the older members of council who remember a country where street poverty was not completely unknown, but it was not. It was simply not the issue it is today. The level of addiction that we see in our streets, the number of people with mental health issues who are clearly not receiving treatment, who don't have a place to live, some of whom should be institutionalized, continues, I think, to be a national embarrassment. It should prick the conscience of every right-thinking Canadian, and I believe it does. And I'm certainly hopeful that senior levels of government, if anyone pays any attention to what we do in Nanaimo Council, will pay attention to us and reflect on the fact that in a democratic society, most of us do not expect private charities or families to be able to deal with these issues in a meaningful way. I have spent enough time in my career in politics talking to parents of children with severe mental health issues who couldn't control them, who couldn't deal with them, who couldn't solve their issues, who couldn't keep them on their meds, and now their children are living in the streets. And so I am sincerely hopeful that someone out there is listening, that the provincial government in particular will start to take this matter seriously. This is a human calamity in our province. It affects every community of any size. When citizens, for reasons that are legitimate in some cases, not legitimate in others, just a question of pure fear, don't feel comfortable going to our public parks, don't wish to shop in stores, don't wish to be out in the community, are talking about getting extra security for their homes, whether it be a way of cameras or locks or whatever. It's a sad commentary in a wealthy democracy with this state. I hope council will forgive me for droning on tonight, but if anyone disagrees with the frustration that I'm expressing, I welcome another speaker to follow me. Otherwise, I'm going to call for the vote on the motion to defer. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Question period, Ms. Gurry. No questions. Well, I'm turning to the chair of the Regional District of Nanaimo and suggesting if there's any competition about being able to speed through meetings. Except in fairness that we know he has a much larger crowd to deal with, including all of us who have a self-interest. A motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. All those in favor, motion carries. Thank you very much.